Meet Dave of Delusions of Grandeur, actor, producer, and director of films like Tales of the Forgotten. He has come to assemble a team of freaks, geeks, and even worse, film nerds, to discuss films ranging from mainstream to downright crazy. There's Tammy car enthusiast and Dave's fiance, Dustin reptile expert and overall horror collector, Jake environmentalist and fine art film critic, and finally Brandon, a therapist with a love of film that can only be seen as insanity. Together under Dave's leadership, they are Inside Movies Galore. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but this month is it's my birthday. It's Brandon's birthday, and we've been switching off here. But Brandon, why don't you tell us about the film that you subjected to us to this week?
That's actually kind of funny because today literally is my birthday.
Shorty, it's your birthday. We're going to party like it's your birthday. No, just kidding.
Actually, if I recall correctly, Ben Affleck had something like that was that from Chasing Amy? I can't remember. But we are going back into the Kevin Smith Askew-averse with Dogma, the 1999 film by Kevin Smith, starring Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Linda Fiorentino, Salma Hayek, Jason Lee, Jason Mewes, Alan Rickman, and Chris Rock. Quite a cast right there.
Indeed.
This film, of course, debuted with some controversy, as we have the late relative of Jesus Christ, who has been charged with finding herself and saving the universe from two rogue angels seeking re-entry into heaven. So, I guess we will go ahead and get started. You know what? I will start on. I'll start with you, Jake. Was this your first time seeing Dogma?
Oh no, definitely not. As I've mentioned before, I think on the Clerks discussion, and certainly on some other discussions, this is, I think, the film that introduced me to Kevin Smith. My memory is not what it should be. It's not what it used to be. And some things have muddled together. I feel like I had already heard quite a bit about Mallrats and Clerks by this time. But Smith himself was a name that wasn't always in those discussions. And I remember at the time I was really, 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 really into movies. I was really into reading the movie previews that Entertainment Weekly would publish. And this was one I'd earmarked because of the cast. I was like, this looks interesting. And then, I was telling my friends about, oh yeah, we're going to go see that. You got it. You've never seen, you got to see this. So yeah, I went with friends and, did see it in theaters. It's one of the few Kevin Smith movies I saw in theaters. I'm honestly not sure how many since then I've seen in theaters. And I was immediately like, well, this is different. And and fun. It is a fun movie. It is. I also remember reading about the controversy, of which there was quite a bit. Religious groups were up in arms about this movie. And the thing is, and I was a lot more religious when I saw it. Potentially, I could have been very offended, but I wasn't. I looked, I thought, and I've said this before. Kevin Smith, he loves his dick and fart jokes. And this movie literally has a shit demon in it. He loves his for better or worse, he loves his gay jokes, and that's probably one of the parts of movies that hasn't aged as well. And he is not the best director out there. There are things he lets go that other directors would not. But it is probably one of his more personal films in a lot of ways, even with all the metaphysical stuff and the bad CGI and all that stuff. It probably is one of his more personal films from what I understand. And you can tell when you're watching it that this is a guy genuinely throwing stuff out there, and it's like, y'all make of this what you will, but I just want to throw into the discussion, and I've always respected that. I respect this movie. I think it is flawed, and parts of it haven't aged well, but parts of it have aged too well. And there are parts that are genuinely hilarious. There are parts that are genuinely funny cringe. Like, I don't always like funny cringe, but I put a picture here of the Buddy Christ. That is absolutely one of the most cringeworthy images you'll ever see, but it's almost hilariously so. And according to IMDb, that's one of the top sellers at Smith's Comic Shop, is replicas of that. But I like the movie. I've always enjoyed it. I haven't seen it in a while, so I was able to come to it a little fresher than I might have otherwise. But overall, this is probably a 5th or 6th viewing. I've certainly seen it more than once, and I was very glad for an excuse to see it again.
All right. So, I guess we will go with you, Tammy. Was this your first time seeing Dogma?
I believe so. If I did see it, it was probably so long ago, I don't know if it was maybe something David might have played a long time ago, but I don't remember seeing it.
I'm not sure I've pulled it out for us, so I think this might actually be your first time.
Okay. Well, I had no idea at all what to expect from it, so I don't know Kevin Smith stuff like everybody else does, so
You'll get acquainted with it a lot more this fall.
Okay. But yeah, I was I guess you'd be I'd say a little surprised, because it took just a little bit to realize, okay, this is about what? And then as it started going, and it was just like, all right, okay, well, this person is that, and this person is that, and okay, now I don't take offense, like, I guess probably other people out there as far as religion and other innuendos that are in some movies and everything. None of that stuff ever bothers me, you know, because I keep one thing in mind: it is a movie, okay, and that is what it is. You know, that's where people now, you know, people that come up with all these things against movies because oh, it had this and it, oh, it had that, and it's a movie. Get over it, you know. I think the religious aspect of it actually, you know, made it more amusing, and there was definitely was a unique set of actors in this that I was surprised about. And yeah, there were some parts that were like really funny, and there were some parts like, okay, that's a little gross.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But I don't know, I had fun with it. I mean, the only problem I had with it, which had nothing to do with the movie itself, is when how I was watching it. It kept buffering.
Ah.
Yeah, and so it's like, all right, come on, continue, come on, you know. But that had nothing to do with the movie, and
I think that had something to do with your connection more than anything else.
had to do what?
With your internet connection that you were at.
I don't know, but if I wasn't enjoying it though, and wasn't interested in it, I would have just after the first few times it did it to me been like, oh, come on, really, you know. But I wanted it to keep going. I wanted to know what, okay, now what? You know. So I will give it that, because it did keep me interested, because it was kind of like, well, now what is he going to come up with, you know? Now who's going to join the group, you know? So, yeah, I did have fun with it.
And you got to see some returning characters from the animated series we watched a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think if some of the characters from that did they use their voices in the?
Yeah, the guy who played one of the newscasters, like in the very beginning. Yep. He played one of the main characters in the animated series, and of course, you know, Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah,
and Randall was the gun shop owner.
Okay. So yeah, I had fun with it.
You know what's actually funny is when they were doing the little thing at the end in the credits, they showed them both together just as a just as a nod. Well, I guess I'll go to you, Dave. Was this your first time seeing Dogma?
No, I think this was at least my third time, because I actually got the chance to see this in the theater when it came out. My mentor that was placed with me by the state, it took me to this one. I had a lot that he took me to, and a lot of them were different. So this was one of them. Of course, he fell asleep halfway through, but I remember watching this all the way through. at the time, and then when they came out with the double disc DVD, which was a big thing at the time to get the special edition 2 disc. That then I saw it. Then now that I've seen it one more time, there are some things that don't age well, like some of the CGI that they had. It was believable when I saw it, but now that I've seen a lot of CGI that has like, I know damn well they did the angel wings with Lucifer in the show Lucifer better than they did on Ben Affleck.
Well, that was like 15 years later, pretty much.
and Supernatural when they did it with Catafel or whatever the heck his name was on the show, the angel that was helping them. When he first showed up and showed his angel wings, to me, I think that's how it should have been. But for some reason, it just did not really make me believe that he was an angel until he was actually down below, you know. But at the time that I watched this, I thought it was credible. So, when I first watched it, but I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the theology that he talked about in here. I mean, he really did his freaking research, you know. So, I think the dialogue about certain things that happened in the Bible was actually told rather comically intelligently. So,
all right,
I was entertained by it. Still am.
Very cool. And the timing of this, I don't remember. I didn't get to hear all of Jake's thing because my wife came in at the time that he was talking. But I don't know if you mentioned that. I mean, of course, in our background, there's a reason for that. Is it did make its way back to theaters earlier this month? Did you mention that, Jake? Well, I will guess not then. For the longest time, Weinstein had full rights to this, and we were unable to really get much. It's also why the Blu-ray of this is worth a small fortune. Because he kind of just clamped down on it. But this year, Kevin Smith finally got the rights back to this film. So it's doing a theatrical tour. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure that there will be a 4K release.
Well, apparently, one of the reasons for that was the controversy because Disney balked at releasing the film, so Weinstein bought the rights himself so that he could get it released. But then that had the after effect of it now belonged to Harvey Weinstein.
Yep.
And yeah.
So this was not my first time watching this film. My story, I don't know if we watched it in theaters with the same group or not.
Probably not.
Because it was early in my Roanoke days that I watched it. And it was with a group from Roanoke. I know I had like Nina with me, Yane, Francois. I know I had him, and Igor. Igor insisted on watching this one. But, you know, he was a priest. He was going to be a priest, so I guess he wanted to. And it was kind of funny because all of the guys in the group decided to go to Dogma, and all the girls in the group decided to go to Runaway Bride.
Yeah.
Which was playing at the same time. And the only one that was the exception was Nina. Which is great because after most of the girls came back, they said, you know what? You guys made a better decision at the end. And from what I've heard about Runaway Bride, it sounds like we all made the better decision going to that one. I was kind of in the middle about my faith at the time because at that time, my father had gone from very much being devout to being almost rabidly anti. And I was kind of just in the middle of going, eh. And I actually really thought the message of the film resonated with me because I thought it was a very strong message, especially for a first Kevin Smith film. I feel like the writing and dialogue is definitely there, but there is a nuance to it that I feel like is above the level of Clerks or Mallrats or Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. There's a little bit of the dick and fart jokes, but it's not quite as bad as a lot of the other View Askew-averse stuff.
Right.
But then again, most of it, even Chasing Amy, which is usually the coveted one, has a lot of flaws in that regard. And it doesn't hold up as well in some aspects.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I do like it. I know that it had a lot of purposes, and part of the religious right feedback that they got from this was one of those purposes. And I thought that it was a very interesting take on religion and dogma in general, which I titled. So it was fun. I haven't watched it in years.
Well, I think neither have we. So for me, it's kind of like a fresh look at it, since I haven't exactly taken it out and just watched it.
I remember how young Matt Damon and
Oh God,
and Ben Affleck look in this.
Oh yeah.
Matt Damon's almost not as recognizable if you look at him from like this and then go to the Bourne like Ultimatum or something.
I mean, they're all quite a bit younger here than some of the stuff we tend to think of them in, but
yeah, it's still a fun film to watch.
Except George Carlin, he's looked the same for 40 years.
But as far as the film goes, to me, it's still a very quality film. It's still one of the best that Kevin Smith has had to offer, and it's one that I always forget about. Not as often as Zach and Mary Make a Porno. I always forget about that one for some reason. But
it did fly under the radar.
I mean, I guess I won't be forgetting. What was it? Kilroy was here, mainly because it's impossible to see. But I won't ever be talking about it because it's impossible to see without lots and lots of money and connections. But as far as this one goes, it's still a favorite, and I'm glad I got the chance to check it out again. Dust off my 2-disc copy, like Dave was talking about, and just boot her up last night because I felt like Sunday was a great day to watch it. So let's get started with this party.
Okay.
So of course we have the introduction of two things here. The first being, the whole Catholic Church doing its centennial, and of course with the revival in Buddy Christ, and of course we have the airport scene with our two angels. I think I'll go ahead and I'll just start with the Buddy Christ. It's an interesting concept that really defines the whole film, where the Catholic Church is looking to revamp its image because the Catholic Church has probably needed it, with especially at the time. That time was when a lot of those allegations of sexual abuse came. So I love that they're retiring the crucifix.
Yes, it's like talking about it's so depressing. And Cardinal Glicky points at the Buddy Christ. Look at it, doesn't it pop?
And George Carlin kills it with this.
Oh yeah,
and I do think
he does.
Buddy Christ also kills it as an icon. As Jake just said, it is still a very popular item and is known far beyond this film.
Right. But they do using Glick, they definitely do get some pointed critiques at the Which, bear in mind, Kevin Smith is Catholic. He was raised Catholic. He's still a practicing Catholic. In the credits, he talks about raising his own Catholic.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Actually, at the beginning and end, they almost have a Monty Python-esque word dialogue at both the beginning and the end.
But like, there's one part where Glick is talking with Rufus, and he's like, "Telling you, man, this ceremony is a big mistake. The Catholic Church does not make mistakes. Oh, please, what about the Church's silent consent to the slave trade and its platform of non-involvement during the Holocaust?" And Glick's like, "All right, mistakes were made." But, there's a big but there.
But I do think that's one thing about this movie that a lot of people who were upset about it got wrong.
Right.
Is I do feel like the movie did a good job of poking fun of it, but I don't think that the movie was anti-religious.
Oh, no.
And it did have a good underlying theme of faith, of loss of faith, and regaining faith.
Right.
I do think you can be a religious person, watch this, and get something out of it.
And this may be skipping ahead a little bit, but like I was raised Lutheran, and when I saw this, I was in my first semester at a Lutheran college. It was not an accident. I was very active in my faith, and it started going off the skids within a couple of years of that. And I still say, without any trace of irony or hesitation, that the snuff film known as The Passion of the Christ basically killed my faith. And then Saved came along to kind of save it a little bit. And I've struggled with it ever since. Dogma was early enough that I was still pretty rock solid, but it still very much resonated with me. And Chris Rock has some of the best lines in the movie as far as I'm concerned in terms of that. And one part he's talking about Jesus. He's like, what he really hates is the shit that gets carried out in his name. Wars, bigotry, televangelism. And it's like, it's funny because he ends with televangelism, but it's also, that really resonated with me and still does. And then his whole
Chris Rock has done some religious type movies before too. Or I think he did Here on Earth after this time, which was another.
I don't know that one as well. Did he do the one that was like a remake of the war? Is this the one you're talking about that was like a remake of an old, I want to say Warren Beatty?
Yeah, almost. Or kind of like Michael, almost.
Maybe.
Or something similar to that effect, where he was a comedian, he died, got a chance to come back to Earth until he found another body, but it was done like earlier in his career, and before I actually kind of like disliked his comedy after a time, because I certainly haven't liked him as the host of the Oscars at all. So
well, to me, Chris Rock has always been hit or miss.
Yeah,
there are things that I remember. Like I remember there was one that he had in his Chris Rock show where he called his own version of Taxi Cab Confessions, and I still remember it well. The guy gets in the car, he's like, "Yeah, I've had a really rough day," and he's like, "You had a rough day," and he's behind the car. Let me tell you something. He takes out the decanter of whiskey. He starts pulling on it as he's going, "Hey, watch out." He's going through.
Right.
And I just think to myself, he can be very funny, but again, like any comedian, it's there. And CB4, by the way, is a great piece. It's not a masterpiece, but it is an amazing film. That should be.
The other one I was going to say, and again, just to me was a really good point that he made, his character made, was the whole talking about how belief can be such a dangerous thing because people get so caught up in beliefs, and he's like, I think it's just better to have an idea,
Mhm.
And I'm like, and I always thought that was a really good point because it's like, yeah. I thought, I think when I first saw this movie, it was almost the perfect time for me to see it. So that's probably one of the reasons I do look at it with nostalgia.
You see, and here I went to the same college, but only because I really liked the choir there.
Yeah, the one that kicked me out.
Well, yeah, that's because you wouldn't surrender your whole career to them.
Yeah. What was I thinking?
Unfortunately, with certain places, sometimes they want you to sacrifice your entire life for them.
Oh yeah.
And pledge your whole soul to them. Go down to the crossroads and give your soul to them.
Drop it. I remember that very well.
I think that's part of the reason I like the car club I'm in. They're not, oh, you have to pay these dues, you have to go to this many shows, you have to go to the show, all the shows that we go to, no. My group isn't like that, there's like she every week there's a list of what shows are out there, and she just wants to know where the group's going and represent us. If 4 of you go to this one and 3 go to this one and 2 go to that one, just represent us, and it's and it's you don't have to have a certain type of a car. It doesn't have to be immaculate. I think I've never really been a group person per se, and I think that's why I like this group, because it doesn't make you do things like that. It's very they're very open, but they make you feel like you're a family without having to jump through hoops.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think that there was actually a contingent of people who were religious that liked this film. Also, that were just as vehement about it than there were people who were against it. And I remember watching that, and I was always fascinated with it at the time. And seeing a lot of the people, burn your copies, get rid of it, it needs to be banned, all of this. And then, of course, the other group basically saying, I don't see why it needs to be banned. It's fine. It has a good message in it.
Well, yeah, it's what people that do that kind of stuff is. I'm Lutheran also, okay? I was brought up Lutheran, and it is what people seem to forget about things, especially like this, is it is a movie, okay?
Yeah.
It is a movie, all right? It's not telling you to do this or do that or believe this or believe that way or think this way or think that way. It is a movie.
And it's not using subliminal messages to try to control my butt to go take over the world.
That
Right. I mean, people.
I will take you.
They get all up in arms because they talked about religion. Oh, they talked about this and this. They lose the fact that it's a movie.
Oh, they just did not do that. They just disrespected my Jesus. No,
right.
That's not going to happen.
It's supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to, movies are there to entertain and to have fun with. They're not you're not sitting there that you gotta make your life around the movie. That's not what a movie is for.
And I feel like I saw a list recently that was like Kevin Smith's favorite movies or something. And if I remember correctly, one of the films that he had very high on the list was The Last Temptation of the Christ, which is also a film well known as controversial in religious circles. Although it's also the movie that my pastor showed us for confirmation class, which I thought that was kind of hilarious. But that's a decidedly less entertaining film, but it's certainly an intriguing one.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
one
this.
worth having on. I think Criterion has a copy of it.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about getting it, but I have like that Scorsese collection, and I'm trying to save space. I like this trivia that IMDb has. It says William Donahue of the Catholic League lambasted the film and publicly protested against it for months without actually seeing it. Dogma, of course. When his office called View Askew and requested a special screening so he could, quote, speak about it intelligently, Kevin Smith responded, "So what has he been doing the past 6 months?" Oh, like, okay.
Well, you know what, though? That is Kevin Smith in his own wit.
Right.
And I believe this came out this actually came out a little bit before Clerks the Animated Series. So, hey, there you go.
And they did have a long route to coming out. Apparently, a lot of the people protesting it were protesting a leaked script that was written before they even started filming.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they didn't even entirely know what they were on about. But, yeah.
Well, let's get to Loki and Bartleby, which are our two angels, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, respectively.
Well, the movie starts with an old man being beat up on the Jersey Shore, which actually comes back to be important later. But
with the three hockey kids, which which always have flies present with them as they go.
Right.
But we'll see them again later.
Yeah.
But I guess Bartleby and Loki.
Mm-hmm.
I love how
this is the married couple in the movie.
Well, they are known to work well off of each other, and they are famous friends for a lot of those.
Right.
And it is funny to watch them go off of each other.
According to IMDb, this was supposed to be a reteaming of Ben Affleck with Jason Lee, and scheduling conflicts changed things up. But then, of course, I mean, Affleck and Damon are known to be bros, so you know that, and they did work very well off each other.
But they've always done that because of their friendship. They've naturally had a good work off, and I love the introduction of it.
Yes,
with Affleck just sitting there with the popcorn, and Matt Damon sitting there convincing this nun to give up the habit.
And he does it by convincing her that the poem from Through the Looking Glass about the walrus and the carpenter is an indictment of organized religion. And never mind that Carol was apparently a conservative Christian. The way he describes it, it's actually a convincing argument. And then when she's like, "What have I been doing with my life?" and gets up and leaves, and Bartleby, Affleck's character, is like, "Here's what I don't get. You know for a fact there's a God. You've been in His presence." And Loki's just, I just like fucking with the clergy.
And I mean, they're very interesting characters, and I like that there is a complexity to them.
Yeah.
Nobody is a straight out evil character, and well, maybe the demon, but even in a lot of cases, there is a story behind his. They all have their motivations. They all have their reason why they do what they do. And you even get to see that kind of reversal at the end, which is great.
His three lackeys are kind of one note, but all the others...
Well, they don't really have much more than a mindless...
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, the poop demon had more of a personality.
Yeah. I mean, hell, even Cardinal Glick has his motivations. They're fairly not exactly noble, but but you know, the church is hemorrhaging followers, and he's really concerned about that. And it's like, I love the part where he's talking about reaching out to the kids and whatever. He's like, get them while they're young. And Rufus is something like, kind of like the tobacco industry. And then Blake Christ of all.
Yeah, numbers.
Well, I think everybody kind of likes Rufus. Well,
Right.
we'll get to it too. But
Right.
when Rufus's entrance happens,
Yeah. Well,
I remember thinking like, okay, and now it's raining. Now it's raining naked people.
I have to admit, I have rarely agreed more with Jay than that moment.
yeah.
Like the big titty girls can't just fall out of the sky.
But what did y'all think of as far as Loki and Bartleby as characters?
Well,
Well, I
just
thought-
more complex than they appear at first, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think their dynamic together is pretty cool. You get a sense of like their camaraderie-ness and a little bit into like. I mean, eventually we learn that it's Bartleby who actually convinced Loki to do something back in the day, to die, basically.
More like not to do something, because Loki
Yeah.
was the angel of death. Bartleby convinced him to put down his sword and to defy God, and so they were thrown out of heaven for that. And I think it was Metatron was giving this backstory to Bethany. And she's like, what, he sent him down to hell or something? And Metatron's like, worse, Wisconsin. For all
The fact that he was banished to Wisconsin, both of them, I thought was
Right.
fucking great because I live in Wisconsin. We both live in Wisconsin, so
Right.
I'm sure it probably resonated with Tammy. Like, what?
Yeah.
In Wisconsin? Okay, now are they actually filming the airport scene in Mitchell Airport or something like that? Okay, let's.
The funny thing is, if this was any other director, they probably would have made a joke like that about New Jersey. But since Kevin Smith is all about New Jersey, he had to turn that on its head a little bit.
Yeah, that was his,
Yeah, I like those two characters a lot too. I thought, like you guys were saying, they played off each other really well. So it was, I just, at the beginning, it was like, when you're listening to what Loki is saying to this nun, it was just like, what? So
they definitely feel like they are those characters that that were basically stranded together for that long. They know each other.
What, like 2,000 years or so?
At least.
And of course, they find out, and this is something that you see with Cardinal Glick, and I believe you see the appearance of Brian O'Halloran as the reporter. He makes two appearances.
One in that found footage of destruction.
They really missed the opportunity to have him say, "And I wasn't even supposed to be here today." Before
Yeah, we could have.
But
you notice that his name is Hicks. What was it, Grant Hicks? I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he's supposed to be Dante's cousin or something.
I do find it funny that that you do have the person who is the gun, the gunsmith. The gunsmith is basically Randall.
Yeah.
But any case, we do have Bethany. We enter. Oh wait, no. Before we get to that, of course, the Centennial essentially to market. They're
basically doing an indulgence, a plenary indulgence, which most people who are familiar with Catholicism know what that's about, and that it has been abused in the past a little bit, a lot, a whole lot. But the idea basically saying that anybody who goes through the doors on that centennial is wiped of their sins. No confession needed. And they're like, we can go back to heaven. We'll do this and we'll get our sins wiped and we will be able to come back. We will be forgiven of what we did. And that's the whole idea that they decided.
Absolved.
They are mysteriously sent this article by someone we eventually find out who, but
and I do like how Matt Damon's character, like Loki's like, I need to do something nice for them. I mean, come on, you know that she still likes that slaughter. He likes that slaughter.
Right.
It's like, you know, there's always, you know, yeah, things change, but the 10 Commandments, they're always there.
Right.
He had his eye on Mubi, the golden calf, which we get to see more of as we go.
Right.
Then we introduce the main character of the film, though I consider Loki and Bartleby to be part of the main characters, really, because they really are in a lot of ways. But is Bethany, which Linda Fiorentino's character. She works at a abortion office, and of course with Janine Garofalo working alongside her, which is kind of funny. And she is having her own crisis of faith, as she still attends Mass every Sunday. She is visited by the Metatron, played by the late, well, you know.
Yeah, Alan Rickman, yes.
By Grandfather's hammer, I shall be avenged.
And this is also a great introduction. He shows up in a pillar of fire. So what does she do? She runs in her closet and grabs a fire extinguisher and puts him out. It's like, Christ, did you have to use the whole can?
He takes them to he takes her to a Mexican restaurant as a part of that whole like
tequila shots.
Yeah.
That whole like basic introduction, and tells the story about how Loki was, of course, that god of death, and Bartleby, who is a watcher. Guess what they do? Ends up convincing him to lay down his sword. He had been drinking that night and apparently gave God the finger when he resigned.
He had been a little put out that when he said he was the Metatron, she just kind of stared at him blankly. And he's like, you people, if there isn't a movie about it, it's not worth knowing, is it? And then when he talks about the last plague, she's like, yes, the 10th plague. And he's like, tell someone you're the Metatron. They stare at you blankly. Mention something out of a Charlton Heston film, and suddenly everyone's a theology scholar.
He does
he's the voice of God.
Right.
He does a great job of doing kind of snide commentary. But of course, the whole like getting drunk and giving God the finger before banishing the two angels, of course, led to angels not being able to imbibe liquor. Right. Hence the spitting.
Yeah.
But I do find it funny how that goes there. And of course, they also do not have any sexual anatomy, as they show off on that. I'm as anatomically correct as a candle. But he gives it down to her and basically gives her the instructions. And she wakes up being told that there will be these prophets, that there is one that talks at length and one that's not.
And I love how she wakes up with these maraca shakers.
You'll meet prophets in a manner of speaking, 2 of them. And he's like, and yes, he says, the one who talks, and he will, at great length, whether you want him to or not. And then, he uses maracas to, and then when she wakes up, she finds them under her pillow. Supposedly, Alan Rickman did not want to let go of those maracas, and he was driving everyone nuts with them.
I figured that this was also where we actually got his relationship with Kevin Smith and almost voicing the villain in animated Clerks.
Right. Well, supposedly he was actually a fan of Chasing Amy, and they were like, well, why don't we see if he'll be in the movie? And they weren't really expecting it, but you know.
And he is a memorable part of that film.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
Alan Rickman is memorable in most things he's in.
I mean, if you're going to pick someone to be the voice of God, you know, and you if it's not Morgan Freeman, I would say Alan Rickman would be in the top. You know,
I do kind of like how she is like to him. Well, why can't God come down and talk to me himself? And he's like, well, if you were to hear the real voice of God, you would not be able to. Your human ears, your human decibels, would not be able to handle.
Yeah. He said something like your head would explode and your guts would liquefy or whatever.
Yeah.
Basically, we went through 5 atoms before we figured that out.
One thing, of course, they also explain is that part of reality existing is that concept that God is infallible.
Right.
And that if Bartleby and Loki manage to get back into heaven, then this will show God to be wrong. And it'll undo everything.
Right.
So they have good reason to want to do what they're doing.
Right.
Now,
we also come to find out later there's another reason why God didn't get involved personally, but you know.
Yeah, they don't tell them that.
Right.
We learned that at the beginning, but they don't tell us that until later.
Right.
And in a way, that opening scene is a really dark opening.
It is.
Because you just hit out of nowhere with it.
Yeah.
But speaking of our skater group, they do come to haunt her that night, and they knock her keys under the car, and looks like they're going to get ready to do to her what they did to the person in the beginning. When you hear a snooch, to the nooch. And Jay and Silent Bob
kind of teenage Ninja Turtle themselves into that situation.
And you know, in Chasing Amy, he makes that comment, Snoochie Boochies, who the talks like that? And yet he continued to talk like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, they introduce themselves, and of course, they are looking for like some sexual reward for their heroics.
Well, Jay makes very clear that that she and Lunchbox here, you know, were just about to get it, you know, even though Silent Bob clearly pulled his weight in the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is my first introduction to Jay and Silent Bob as characters.
I seem to remember when I saw this in the theaters, the group I was with, I remember when Jay and Silent Bob were introduced and when Jason Lee shows up. I remember just cheering and applause from my friends. And I'm sitting here going, should I know these people?
See, you should have been watching your Kevin Smith before.
I should have, yeah.
Have done your homework.
Evidently they'd seen Mallrats before this, so.
Yeah.
Mallrats, Clerks, probably most of the prior films that released to this.
Right.
I would say that this is the film, though, that took Kevin Smith into the big time.
Right.
Because this one was a big one.
I realized that when Jay and Silent Bob showed up, I realized, you know, that I had just kind of like seen them in the cartoon form, you know. and
they were no longer restrained,
right,
by the censors.
Right.
In fact, when Jay meets God later, you can tell the censors were nowhere around.
Right. That's for sure.
But she's about to basically just write them off and leave when he said, like some kind of a prophet, basically.
We could go back to Red Bank and make ourselves a profit.
And then she decides to take them to coffee. And I love how they both look. Like they're both expecting her to put out. And they're just like,
right.
with their feet going, like,
And they explain
They're
that
like Beavis and Butthead before they think they're going to score.
Yeah, their
and
reasoning
they
for being
explained
there.
that the reason they were there was because of Silent Bob's love of everything John Hughes.
I mean, well, Jay was like, I like 16 Candles, but all the rest of this stuff.
I love it. It's a fucking Breakfast Club where all these stupid kids actually show up for detention.
They were convinced that this place was real. Stuff was going on for real. So they both went there searching for it. And then realized that, no, it's not real.
Right. Yeah.
We need like a dope connection there, and we need to set up shop there and make a fortune.
Right. We realize that with these films, no one was dealing.
It shows how stupid they both really are.
Well, you see further evidence of that later, especially with Jay. But it is kind of funny that they have this setup for them being there, and then later we get not a John Hughes directed film, but there is a harsh dig at Home Alone later in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Yeah, Selma Hayek does that.
Right. Right. She's when we meet the Muse later, we get a fun little dig there. But
she basically lets them know that they are to come along with her to New Jersey, and that this is a sign and all that. And they're just like, okay. But I do like how she's like, under no circumstances, but Jay actually says, well, okay, let's just say that the world is going to end, and like we're like 5 minutes away from oblivion. Will you you do it with us then? She's like, okay, in that unlikely scenario, which comes up later in the movie,
which of course becomes likely as soon as she says that. Yeah, and he's like, all right, but I get to drive.
Which her deadpan humor is what makes it comical in Men in Black too. So. I remember her playing that autopsy a girl that Will Smith just kind of flashy things her, and
apparently she and Kevin Smith did not get along, and they actually
because I haven't seen her in other things with him. Really, I haven't seen her in a lot of other things with him.
Well, yeah. Well, apparently they didn't speak for years after this movie. But when he revealed that he was sick a few years ago, she was one of the people that contacted him to wish him well, and they patched it up apparently. But yeah, I don't really know. What's up?
I mean, it's just like, there was that feud between him and Bruce Willis after Pop Out. Which after Kevin Smith though found out about that about Bruce Willis being sick, he was like he called up and they actually did patch up things before Bruce Willis lost the ability to really communicate.
Right.
So it happens, but that's how Hollywood is, right?
Right.
But I do think it's funny that Jay insists on driving when he's never really driving.
well, he does, and then she's like, "What gear are we in?" Gear. And then they show them by gear. Yeah, and then he tells Bob like I ever drove before.
I know how to drive a stick shift. I don't prefer it. Actually, I'm sure that Tammy, you're like you do the vintage car thing. I know you know how to drive a stick shift.
I do, for the most part. I know when to shift and everything without killing the car, but sometimes I don't always go go to first and second and third. It's sometimes the last time I drove stick, I was kind of I was basically going from first to third.
But yeah, I mean,
It's,
getting that kind of speed out of probably first gear is impressive. But
it can be tricky too. I mean, I remember my dad used to have a little British sports car, and the dang thing was tiny, and it had a lot of power. So like, and he let me drive it a couple of times, but oh, it was difficult. It was like if you weren't careful. But I've done stick on less touchy vehicles, and yeah, it's all right if you know what you're doing.
I mean, if I had to do it, I could probably do it, but no, it's not my thing, you know.
Yeah, I don't prefer to drive stick, but I can. I would prefer I prefer automatic because I don't have to think about it all the time.
The only time I've ever done stick shift is at the arcade.
Yeah, as Jake said, you know, they end up basically burning out the car and having to walk to the next area, and that's about when they meet Rufus, as Dave said earlier on, falling out of the sky, and of course.
What was it? I think Jay's like, guys like us don't just fall out of the sky, you know.
Yeah.
Right then.
And he introduces himself.
Big-titted women don't fall out of the sky, you know.
As somebody who has died, and he's the 13th apostle.
Yes.
But he was left out because of his race, essentially.
Yeah.
And that Jesus, of course, was a person of color, which many have debated that is true in a lot of ways. But that's also one of those things like, well, they just have to do a little cover up of that. And he decided he was going to try and help them in order to try and get in good and see if she could help him out with his campaign to be put into the Bible or into biblical stories.
Right. Well, he falls down with this thing, like he's not wearing a stitch of clothes, but he has a little scroll behind his ear, and like he's talking with Bethany, and he's like, he pulls it up, and Jay's like, man, no wonder he saw Jesus. He's rocking the guns.
Yeah. Admittedly, it did look like he had a joint behind his ear.
But it's like he unrolls it, and he's like, yeah, you see? And she's like, I don't know what this is. It's Aramaic. He said, see you in 2 years, Jesus. Basically told me when my number was up.
It took the surprise out.
Right. Yeah.
But what are y'all's thoughts on Chris Rock as the 13th apostle in this?
He was fun.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was fun. He was as fun as Cuba Gooding Jr. was in What Dreams May Come. You know?
Oh, I would say a little more fun, but you know. Yeah, he's basically Chris Rock in a Kevin Smith movie. I mean, it's not a huge stretch for the role from what he usually does. And I'm not trying to slight Chris Rock. He definitely does a good job. But it's a lot of it is very much in line with what you would expect from Chris Rock at that point in his career.
I happen to have.
Yeah, he was the first comedian that was of color that had a high voice for me. Chris Tucker was the second.
Yeah, I always thought Chris Rock was a lot funnier than Chris Tucker.
But I actually think it was interesting with the character and the way they wrote him is that they wrote him to start off with the Chris Rock shtick.
Right.
But they make the character far more complex as it goes. He becomes much more sympathetic and less one-tone. And they could have just made him a one-tone joke character, but they really do a good job with him as he goes.
And like I said, he does get some of the better lines in the movie, I think. And he plays off well off of the other people. He plays great off of Salma Hayek. And he plays off pretty well off the rest of the cast. Like I thought he like I say, he fits right in. And
in reality, a lot of the Chris Rock initial shtick is limited to basically his introduction. After that, once he's gotten that out of the way and they just make him like a character that's in the movie, most of that's gone. They just basically have him be who he is, which is great. Like I say, they could have done that the entire movie. They could have had him just basically be that one note character for the whole movie, but they did not. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm glad that they had the includence of many of the different characters along the.
Okay, that was an accident, but
but
let's see. It's not surprising he hasn't done more with Kevin Smith. Like, was it Jay and Silent Bob reboot that he was?
Yeah, he was in that. He did the he played the,
or was it Strike Back? I feel like
no, it was Strike Back. It was Strike Back.
Yeah, and he was like directing the movie about Blunt Man and Chronic, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was obviously a stand-in for another director.
Yeah,
but he introduces himself as that, and they basically go to movies,
all right,
to get a sound. Basically such a. What did he walk? It's like, yeah, we did that the whole time that we were there. Did you ever see a fat apostle?
Right.
But
valid point.
They do manage to get to movies and put themselves back together and back on the road. Meantime, we get to see basically Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's character on the bus, and they're talking about this stuff as he's going to do his own dispensing of justice, and they make that bet about the couple that are kissing.
So they've already gone to the gun shop at this point.
Oh yeah, sorry, they got well, we talked about
right
our appearance of Randall.
You gotta love how they're just talking about it in front of him, just without holding back. And he's talking about raining down sulfurs, an endurance trial. Any idiot with a pack of matches can start a fire. Yeah, and then you get this reaction shot of the gun shop owner just going.
I do find it funny that he's actually a lot less like his old character than Dante was. You can almost feel like Dante just really didn't want to be that day, but
well, especially once the carnage started.
But Loki picks his gun because he wants to start a massacre along the way up their part of the journey, right?
Trying to make up for the fact that for what he did to get him kicked out in the first place. So he's like, yeah, look, I'm ready to take back up the mantle.
Right.
And
doesn't he say something like, how better to atone for quitting my job than picking up the job, essentially. Like, yeah.
I mean, the later scene where we get into that in the boardroom is better, but that is funny that they do that. And then, of course, he kills him and the girl there, and then everybody else is running off the bus, and then they're like, I guess we're walking.
Right.
Well, Bartleby was a little annoyed that he'd sacrificed their ride for his bullshit. So,
and I believe it was right around this point that we are introduced to Azrael. Jason
Lee kills that person for the AC
to take her base of operations. Yeah, but at the movies thing, that's the part where we got a lot of info dump from Metatron. Here's where Rufus fills in a lot of the gaps.
Yeah,
but then they look around. They're like, "Hey, where'd Jay and Bob go?" And they find a nearby strip club.
Well, that was because he made that because he was trying to say like, okay, tell me something about myself. It's like, you masturbate more than anybody else on the planet. Well, everybody knows that.
But
No.
do they realize that you look at guys while you do that? You
Well,
think,
most
not
people
all the
think I'm a
time,
guy.
man.
Yeah,
So he had to prove to Bob that he is not gay. So they went to strip joint.
and that's where we see we're introduced to Serendipity, our muse, and a very, 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 very much younger Salma Hayek, who I would say she is still one of the most gorgeous women alive.
Oh, she is still a
Oh my
stunning woman.
Yes, she was very well cast in that particular role.
Hey,
But-
that's a good way to inspire people, inspire them to do
Exactly.
it.
Well,
I love how it's Kevin Smith character that's taking up the dollars as it goes. Especially that last part where he's like, he does them both. And he does that little dance with them with the money.
and he's in a bit of a competition with a gang whose leader is played by Dwight Ewell, who had a co-starring role in Chasing Amy, and he's got a much smaller role here, but it's a little different. But
It could have ended the way I thought it was originally going to end, is that they were going to come to a fight.
yeah,
But it goes the opposite way. They actually make Jay and Silent Bob honorary members of the gang.
right. Yeah, but the
Except it's them that they send after the shit demon.
Well, I mean, they've got that where Loki basically realizes, like, okay, things aren't there. I have to get outside help because y'all can't obviously handle it. Talking to these skater kids,
yeah,
and which they kind of remind me of
That's
the
right.
three
Not
kids,
Loki,
trick-or-treating
it's,
kids, and
It's
Nightmare.
Jason Lee's character.
Yeah.
Which is funny how Jason Lee, of course, who was the protagonist in Mallrats.
hmm well,
Um,
the protagonist's hanger-on.
Well, in a sense, protagonist.
Yeah.
But I do find it funny how they kind of remind me of the three trick-or-treaters from A Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't know why.
Yeah, but less personality. But yeah,
Yeah, that was. They do have that explanation, and of course, you have the thought that God is a woman. But
Yeah.
I do like the idea that they look at that, and then of course Alan Rickman says, like, oh, technically it's not really a she, it's sort of like a, but that's why they constantly like exchange he she throughout the movie.
the now you have this idea in my mind, and especially with his dapper and outfit as Jason Lee was wearing. Now you got me thinking he should have done a song and dance number like Oogie Boogie does.
Or kidnap the Santa Claus, tie him up a string.
Well, yeah. No. The kids. I'm not thinking. I want to see. Never mind. But anyway,
I think that Jason Lee does an amazing job as one of the major antagonists.
right.
I mean, he actually does not phone it in. He's very different from his character in Mallrats, which is very important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he seems to have more together, like in both Mallrats and, frankly, Chasing Amy as well. He plays sort of a kind of a schlubby, not really someone who really has it all together kind of character. In this one, he's focused, he's determined, he has a mission,
But yeah, that's why Jason Lee is more, like I say, he's a very different character in this one, and I could see both his character here and his character in Mallrats being totally different people.
and very different from his My Name is Earl character.
Technically, these all take place in the same universe.
Wait, yeah.
Which is interesting because there are multiple characters throughout the universe being played by the same people, actors.
And that's true of a lot of his regulars. I mean, how many people did Ben Affleck play in this universe? They were pretty fair number. Hell, he played two of them in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I think he reprised his Chasing Amy character, and then he played himself.
Yep. And they even brought Matt Damon in for that one, which was great.
Yes.
Some people do reindeer games, which I admit, reindeer games is something that he digs at them multiple times throughout the. I
still haven't seen that, actually. I need to.
Some of us do reindeer games.
Maybe I don't need to. But yeah, well, I remember that one. He had a dig about because I think it was Miramax that was producing the Blunt Man and Chronic movie.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, who do you think's going to be in it? And he's like, oh, probably Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. They put them in everything.
Well, as they were filming Good Will Hunting 2, hunting season.
Best cameo ever. Damn it, Ben. I said I'm busy. But anyway, so Serendipity gives us a little more backstory too. And I did love, again, this is where that Home Alone dig comes in. She's like, I was responsible for 19 of the 20 top grossing films of all time. The one with the kid with the burglars trying to break in, and I had nothing to do with that. Some asshole sold his soul to Satan to get the grosses up on that piece.
That was funny when she did that.
And it's funny because that was a John Hughes scripted film. So I wonder if that was an intentional kind of like, because he didn't direct it, they were going to poke fun at it, I guess.
Yeah, well, it is interesting how John Hughes has managed to enter into this without actually being in it.
Well,
yeah.
And this movie does, see, this is one thing that I've always liked about Kevin Smith, and I always like it about Quentin Tarantino. There are other people, too, that do this a lot. The Coen brothers do it to a degree. Sam Raimi does it to a degree, but definitely Tarantino and Smith, they synthesize so much stuff and just reference it repeatedly in their work. And with Smith, it comes off a lot more like just a giant nerd speaking that language with other nerds. Like, he doesn't synthesize it as fully as Tarantino or the Coens do.
No, but I certainly think he enjoyed it when he kicked everyone off that train. He was like,
yes.
They didn't have their tickets.
Yes. Yeah, well, it wouldn't be a Kevin Smith movie without some Spielberg references. And that, when there are two times in the movie that Silent Bob speaks, and that's one. Well, of course, we haven't gotten that far yet, but
no.
But I do find actually Smith and Tarantino do have a lot of similarities in their beginnings, because they both were huge nerds for the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them got a cheap start, and they both took a gamble, and they both ended up successful, just in different ways.
Right.
But of course, while she's explaining a lot of this, the Golgothan comes out of the toilet, and the basically the most disgusting part of the movie.
Just about, yeah. And I never loved this part. I mean, this is straight up. This is literal toilet humor.
Yes.
Very literal toilet humor. And the Golgothan is voiced by Smith regular Ethan Suplee, which I didn't fully realize. But then when I saw his name, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But what's up?
I do find it funny that they had the gang go after him, and of course it wipes the floor with them.
Right.
And then Silent Bob comes out and hits them with basically air freshener, essentially. Where do you have that? And then he's like, sprays this part.
I'll be honest. I was laughing when you just heard the sounds of the guys getting beat up, and they kind of extended the reaction of the others a little bit. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, they showed everyone's like exaggerated. Yeah, like, but yeah, I love that. Even though that whole part was pretty disgusting, and I felt like it was a little bit beneath the movie as a whole. The way that Silent Bob takes care of the threat, where the thing that she reads it, she's like, knocks out strong odors.
Well, yeah, it did.
I loved it. I was like, oh, that's great.
That was definitely a that whole thing.
Why would you carry that with you? We're like, why?
Well, we also
Well,
saw.
maybe he leaves the stink behind like you do.
Well, no, I think he was eyeing Jay like
Yeah, well, yeah,
obviously.
he farts and he just sprays it behind him.
Yeah.
And of course, we did see in Mallrats that Silent Bob does carry quite a lot of stuff in that overcoat.
Well, yeah, I mean, they call it his armor, essentially, as Jay said. You're going to let him rattle around in your armor?
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. That was probably the most base humor of the entire movie, right there.
I just couldn't. When you saw it starting to happen, and then I thought the guy was just gonna come up out of that, and then he was gonna turn into something else. I didn't think he was going to actually
they
be
missed
that.
They missed a golden opportunity, though. We were just talking about all the Spielberg references, and nobody looked at that demon and said, that is one big pile of shit.
What's funny is, of course, we also
they missed a golden opportunity to put Jeff Goldblum in there saying that.
Exactly. Well,
they could have very well had a lot of Stephen King references as well.
Yeah.
Especially with Jason Lee coming across like Linoge in that first thing where he kills that person.
I'm a little teapot, short and stout.
I keep thinking about like where he kills that old woman like straight out at the beginning of the Storm of the Century, and I was like, that is not very far off from that particular part.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we do get. I'm not sure if it goes back. I know it was that we do get to see this before Jason Lee meets with Affleck and Matt Damon, which is the boardroom scene. Which, as far as their executions, it's one of my favorite scenes where they're sitting there and they're doing their meetings. Like, why do I smell onions? And you see Matt Damon just carving an onion,
right?
And he's having basically he does his little speech. He sneezes and he like moves on. He keeps talking about his speech of like, there's not a good, decent person out of all of you.
Well, before that, he gives the whole voodoo doll speech, right? Yeah.
Like, it really does look like you, doesn't it? And Ben Affleck, he has Ben Affleck go in, and Ben Affleck is just like rolling his eyes at this whole thing, and just goes down everybody's list of sins on the table. It's like, I mean, he gets to the one was like, oh, you're an innocent. Good for you. Gives it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Then to the head of it is like, your stuff is so vile that I can't even say it aloud. And he just whispers it to him, and then he's like, he's your son, you sick, twisted bastard.
Right.
And then he leaves the room with them together, and then of course Damon smashes the onion thing. He's like, I don't believe in voodoo.
Well, before that, he gets him really worked up.
Yeah.
It's like, it
really does look like it, doesn't it?
Although I almost thought, like, when he sneezed, I wished that the guy would have sneezed.
Well, there was a reason for him sneezing, like that they go into at the end. But then he just comes right back in with the gun and just starts firing. And then it's kind of funny if you listen to the commentary along with it. Meanwhile, Affleck's character is trying to read a magazine while it's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes to the one woman standing and offers her gum.
Yeah.
Like, was like, but you didn't say God bless you when I sneezed. And he's like, Loki, come on.
You're getting off easy. Yeah. Getting
It
off.
was to me, I don't know why that scene entertained me a lot, but
Oh, it does.
there are a lot of times we look at those people who are, on boards and they carve up the world and they are above everybody, which is, I guess, the point. It's like, you guys are above everybody. You have nothing to fear.
Yeah, and that was his point. He said that, what makes a decent human being fear, which there are definitely different schools of thought on that. But he does have a good point that when you think you're above everyone, you think you don't answer to anyone. And you kind of need something to tether you to reality, even if it is fear,
Well, except for that one woman who was innocent.
Yeah.
But,
which, I don't know how she could truly be innocent to be on the board of a company like that. But comparatively speaking,
there's always one out of 99%.
Yeah.
I love that Movies is actually literally the golden cat.
Yes.
And they continue that iconography in the restaurants throughout the entirety of the universe.
Clerks 2 takes place in a Movies restaurant.
And it is playing that Movies is definitely there. And Kevin Smith has opened up Movies around as sort of like art projects. There is one, I think, that's a permanent fixture, but I can't remember where. Probably in LA. I mean, that's where they all are, seemingly. But,
is it?
Well, that's where all these art fixtures seem to be. But that he did have a whole bunch of converted Movies that he was going around the country with. And then he ended up, I think he kept one open. But I can't be 100% on that. But let's see. Back to the group. I want to say that they end up. Is this where they get on the train? I cannot remember.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because they all end up around each other, not really knowing who they are, at least until.
And we forgot, Jason Lee did meet up with them at a toy store, and I want to say that she also no, they didn't actually introduce her as a last scion to him.
No, Jason Lee's character was...
he meets with them at that toy store and lets them know that he's the one who sent them that he's technically he's incognito, kind of up there from the pits of hell, to try and help them out, because he's just trying to be a good guy about it, and that heaven is sending people to stop him. Not just heaven, but hell as well. Which makes sense, because as they say, Lucifer would have made a play if he had known things. And also, Lucifer has just as much stakes in everything not ending as the rest of them.
And he basically tells them, going around killing people is too high profile. You need to calm down a little.
And that's really where you start to see a slight shift between the two, with Matt Damon kind of calming down a bit, and it's Ben Affleck's character that seems to be a bit more prickly and expressing more doubts, because there's a part of him that's like, we do all this and you all start trying to stop us, from doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes to a head on the train, which comes after, where they're all kind of getting along with each other and not knowing that that's the angels, because the one person who can identify them is asleep.
Calling themselves Larry and Barry.
Yeah. And I love how Jay and Silent Bob get along well with Loki.
Right. It's like later he's like something like, but Jay and Bob, man, those guys are all right.
But and of course Ben Affleck gets along well with of course our Bethany, but she gets really drunk and lets slip the whole plan there, and then he's like, oh well, you would have to kill them, and it just it turns into a confrontation, especially once Chris Rock shows up, and you see that yes,
Rufus.
he recognizes them, and that's where Silent Bob throws him from the trains.
Yeah,
and
you got that guy sitting there
tickets.
going. You got that guy just staring at him like, no, not me. Yeah.
I do find that funny. Like, no ticket.
Yeah. Of course,
Indiana Jones reference.
Yes, the Last Crusade. Great moment in that movie.
And for those who are not as familiar with Kevin Smith's work, typically when Jay and Silent Bob are involved, Bob is not, well, he's Silent Bob, right?
Yeah.
But when he does speak, it is something profound. That Chasing Amy speech being the biggest
right.
of that. Matter of fact, it's the best example of that.
I think he does. He speaks once in each of the first 3 movies, doesn't he?
Yes.
It's like I think in Clerks he says something like, it's not every girl that bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you. And then I think in Mallrats he did the Star Wars quote, do or do not, there is no try.
But the idea is that he's silent because he doesn't see the point in speaking unless there is a meaning to it.
Yeah.
Whereas Jay speaks constantly and there is very little meaning to what he says.
Sometimes see, like we saw at the very end when Bob speaks again, I think he tells God thanks, and Jay smacks him and gives him a dirty look.
I mean, shoot, I think he only speaks once in the Clerks animated series.
There was a joke. There was a joke in that one about Jay talking about how he couldn't talk.
But I mean, and they made a joke again about the Chasing Amy thing because Chasing Amy was there. We'll have to cover that one of these days.
Yeah.
Where he basically, we're in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which we will be covering in November. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, you can always speak up when you talk about this Chasing Amy garbage, but but nothing else. Like, why can't you just say, "How was your day?"
Right.
But his speech in that one was also hilarious because he had to point out the obvious to Jay in that particular movie. Mm-hmm. The sign. But yeah, that was a fun conference. Well, it was an interesting confrontation, and it really did change the dynamic between the two. Whereas you felt like at the beginning it was Loki that was more of the antagonist, angel-wise. Well, for obvious reasons. But it's looking more and more like it's actually Bartleby that's more of that antagonist.
Well, as he starts to explain later, he's like, you humans were given all this. You were always the favorite, and you pissed it away, and you don't even want it, and it's like, yeah, it was basically talking with her that he had sort of a light bulb moment where he realized,
And that's the other thing is that they can let it go, but the angels are not allowed to let that hurt go. And that is where it continues. That whole pain that goes on for centuries.
Right.
And it's kind of an interesting thing because up until this point, Bartleby has been that sympathetic character. Mm-hmm. And Loki's been the one that's more antagonistic, blow him away.
Well, I mean, Loki's been the more... I'm not sure I would necessarily say I thought one was more...
Well, I feel like their roles kind of reversed in the fact of one more willing to kill than the other.
Well, yeah, there is that.
And but when you see it with Loki, it's more of like, it's not personal. It's just, work.
Exactly.
But with Bartleby, it's definitely personal. And it definitely reflects it once they get to Jersey. But we also have it to where Metatron shows up as she realizes
after Rufus tells her that she is actually a descendant of Jesus Christ, his family.
Well, yeah, his family.
Yeah, which of course says like, well, they left that out. And there's a lot of very deep conversation between Rufus and her.
Mm-hmm.
And that also comes with with Metatron and her, as you know, it's like, well, there's this boy that says, you know, take it back.
Right.
And if I had a choice, I would.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
he takes it there, and they all get dried off and there. But I love that scene because you see it. Linda Fiorentino's acting there was really great about her showing that breaking point,
right,
where she just goes off in the water, and I thought that was really excellent work acting, and the way that they responded to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where she had to find her strength to move on. But what did y'all think of that whole thing?
Right. Well, we should note first of all that they got off the train, and someone made a comment about that. It might have been Jay. I don't remember. And I think it was Rufus that said, "Very simple strategy: do not be where your enemy thinks you're going to be," or something like that. Yeah. Very, which makes sense, yes. But it's a good scene. And again, the whole, and here you get, again, Rufus giving a backstory that might be controversial to a lot of people. But he makes a good point. He's like, yes, Jesus was born when Mary was still a virgin. But he's like, but do you really think that she and her husband would stay married all those years if he wasn't getting any? It's like, that's a valid point. Yeah. Jesus.
There was nothing in the Bible saying that Mary had to remain a virgin after the birth
exactly.
of Jesus.
Yeah. And it is true that there is essentially a gap from his childhood to his adulthood. It's there's a couple of moments of like later childhood and whatnot.
Well, supposedly Jesus had brothers and sisters.
Well, yeah, and that's the point they make here, definitely. And Bethany is descended from them. And I'm not sure if anyone's actually mentioned the term they keep using for her, the last scion, which is something that means a lot to everyone that it's spoken to except her until she understands it.
I do find it funny when that's revealed, and then Jay's only comment like, "She's part black."
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I guess.
Well, if you think about it in those terms, yeah.
I think that if we go back far enough, most of us are probably part of most things.
Well, they do say that pretty much every race but the ones in Africa were partially descended from Neanderthals. So, yeah.
Yeah, except most of us aren't sporting the unibrow.
Well, partially descended from many, 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 many generations ago is a little different from like having a first cousin once removed.
But I really liked both Chris Rock and Alan Rickman's performance there.
Oh yeah,
showing that level of sympathy, and that level of also empathy there, trying to let them understand their relationships to Jesus as a character.
Well, I think one of the best scenes in the movie was in an Alan Rickman scene when he said that it was unfair of me, and I sympathize with you because it was unfair of me to have to tell the little child Jesus that he was going to be the Son of God because I was the one who told him.
Yeah.
that he was going to be such, and that was a heavy burden to bear for that small of a child, and you as well. That's why I don't. That's why I sympathize and think that it sucks.
Well, and he also makes an interesting point of how he points out how it also hurt God to not be able to deliver the news directly, which was an interesting point.
Because it would kill Jesus.
Exactly.
And they do at this point reveal all of it, that the reason why God didn't just put an end to it, which God could have, was because God is missing at this point.
Yeah,
because
they don't
God
know.
has a secret love of skee-ball.
Yes.
And sneaks down to Earth to do that, which of course was our old man from the beginning.
Right. Well, of course, we still don't get that. It's not. Bethany finally puts it together right at the end.
Yeah, but
yeah.
we aren't given that, but most of us can put 2 and 2 together
Right.
at that point.
Right.
Most of us.
Yeah.
But that was our. But that gives our hero a little bit of a rallying cry, and our prophet actually makes some good points. It's like, well, why don't we convince this guy not to open the church on that day?
Yeah.
Where they're like, wow, the prophet actually lives up to his name.
Yes.
And they go to convince Cardinal Glick,
Yeah.
which doesn't go very well. Rufus even tries to be that holy language on him, but it does not work.
Well, that's where we get the comment about him wishing they had the tobacco industry's numbers, and we also, this is also where we learned that Glick is an avid golfer, and later in the next scene, Jay says something like, "Yeah, but we got him back. Show him, Bob," or whatever, and he whips out the Glick's golf club from his coat. It's like,
hey, you know what? That would be like them. Like, yeah, that's right. We got him back.
Well, and that's, I think, the same scene that Jason Lee. He comes up as the demon, and he gets the golf club in his stomach, and he gets the surprise of his life.
Not just yet, but
he basically waylays them at the bar after that when they fail to convince Glick.
Right.
And as they're doing that, they're having that centennial, and of course Loki and Bartleby show up, and of course there's a scene in a parking garage between this where they both have it out, and Loki's like, well, shoot, I mean, if they're right and everything's going to end, I don't want to be a part of this. And like I say, they have that split, and you can see Loki actually doesn't really want to end everything because of this.
He wants to go home. That's his thing. He
says, I want to go back home to Wisconsin.
And
no, he wants to go home to heaven.
Yeah.
But he says, he's like, I'm not trying to destroy everything. I'm not trying. This is bigger than we thought.
But of course, Bartleby weighs it down to this. It's like, it doesn't matter. This is something she has to admit that she's wrong.
Yeah.
And it comes down to just that.
Mm-hmm.
And reality be damned.
Right.
And that's a very powerful scene there as well. And that's where the dynamic changes, where at a while Bartleby has been kind of like gently guiding from the back. Here he just basically says, no, we're going and you're going to follow along, and Loki's like, all right.
Right.
And when they show up at the church, again, Loki is kind of like in the background as it's Bartleby who comes forward. And when the officer comes in there, it's like, okay, you two is there. And he just breaks the officer's neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then just starts this slaughter. as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they're in that bar.
Meanwhile, back at the bar,
Where Jason Lee's character basically says, you get to find out about his character. He was also a muse. And
well, he randomly shows up, and
Yeah.
then he asks the bartender for a holy bartender, and then dispatches the bartender. And
I
after
do like it how
while-
Jay gets that at the end of the
Yes.
like later on after a bit. Jay was like, "Oh, I got now, holy bartender."
and meanwhile, Serendipity shows up as well. She had been trying to do some research for them, and shows up with some information, but a little bit too late on some of it.
That it was basically Jason Lee's character that ended up actually covering Loki and Bartleby's tracks,
Right.
and that he was, of course, a muse who basically he was a conscientious objector in a way for the battle. It's like and decided to wait and see who came up on top.
Right.
But because he didn't fight in the war, he was then banished to hell.
Right.
And he is like, I wasn't a fighter. I was an artist.
And she's like, no, you know who's an artist? Elvis was an artist. And he went and fought for his country. That is why he is the king and you are a schmuck.
even Jason Lee's character, who is obviously evil at this point, you see where his motivation is.
Yeah. And I will admit this. I do think that it may have been an overreaction on God's part to cast the people who did not participate down as well.
Yeah.
I could see why he would carry a grudge about that. And definitely spending an eternity in hell and knowing that he's going back to it, he does have a reason to desire nothingness. Because he says it would be better.
He's one of those that actually does have a legitimate reason to say, we are done with this.
Yeah.
And he's of course got the hockey kids there.
Yeah.
Helping him out. And then the muse is eyeing the golf club and Bob as of course Jason Lee is saying, we're going to sit back and watch it all happen as they turn on the news, and we get to see again the reporter there. And I'm sorry, it would have been hilarious if they had added that I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
Exactly. He did that on at least one of the takes.
Well, I'm sure that the writers had at least some. They debated adding that. They debated.
Well, the movie went through several drafts. I'd be shocked if it didn't show up in one of the drafts. But and it could have been Brian O'Halloran was like, I don't really want to say that in this movie. I do it all the time anyway. Do we have to? It could have been that, but who knows? But
he basically says, well, while we're here, fine, go ahead, take your shot. I'm a fucking demon.
Yeah.
Even opens his shirt. It's like, go ahead.
And his chest collapses into a black, nasty void. And he's like, but I'm a fucking demon.
Basically, and his voice actually is like, it's like he said, I'm a fucking demon. It's like, it's about Cardinal Glick would be the kind of priest who would bless his golf clubs to try and improve his game.
Yes.
See, and I didn't.
No. First, they were like, it's because he said it was, I'm a demon. You strike a demon with an instrument of God. And Jay's like, holy shit, Silent Bob, you're an instrument of God.
I was wondering why he was able to destroy until then they said why,
Yeah.
Right.
Because the golf clubs were blessed. Because I was like, what does this golf club have to do with destroy?
And they also had Bethany bless the cops behind the bar, and that's how they dispatched the other three. And they were like, it's one of the perks.
Oh yeah, she blessed the water.
Right.
Right.
She's like, I gotta try that water to wine thing at my next wedding. Yeah.
So they end up going out there, and of course, everybody's slaughtered by this point.
Yeah.
And they see Loki, and he's basically got his wings basically shattered, and he is getting like wasted.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Looking up at like the sky with just basically, he's like, yeah, he doesn't pick it up and just dropping people. He's had all this repressed rage. It's all been coming.
Yeah.
Well, he basically says that after talking to Bethany, he just kind of snapped.
Mm-hmm.
But he does end up, of course, and then of course Bartleby does come back down there, and he ends up killing Loki because Loki's like, "Nah, I can't let you do this. I gotta take you out."
Yeah.
But he already lost his powers and was human, and basically he ends up killing Loki for it.
Right.
It's like, I can't let you be in my way.
Right.
And that plan being, I'm going to go in there, and then when I get out, the officers are going to do me the favor and take me out, and the whole thing will be done. Meanwhile, as they're hiding there, and Jay is basically remembering the agreement that she made 5 minutes from the end of the world.
Yeah.
He mentions the person who is in the hospital.
Yeah. John Doe Jersey. And she's like, what? John Doe Jersey. And she's like, where are they keeping him? Oh, he's in that hospital over there.
Conveniently.
Yes. So she grabs Bob and goes running over to the hospital.
I do like how they're exiting the hospital, and they got in the announcement, this is the apocalypse.
Everybody stay calm. It's like, if you want calm and orderly, don't lead with this is the apocalypse.
Well, they tried to basically take out Bartleby, but Bartleby is, of course, an angel, so he is stronger. And then, of course, Jay does, as Jay usually does, the wrong thing, and severs Bartleby's wings for him.
With an automatic gun, basically. Yeah.
Which, of course, then gives Bartleby the ability. He's like, I'm going to go through the arches, and then I'll come out, and then the cops will kill me, and then that'll be the end of reality.
Right. And meanwhile, Bethany has found John Doe Jersey and unplugs the. As she does so, she's like, I hope you're a skee ball fan. It's like,
yes, God's power leaves the body, and of course goes through her and basically ruptures her stomach, or basically all of her insides.
Right. So basically, the idea being that God had been trapped in a comatose body because if they killed him, he would have gone straight home to heaven. Yeah.
And then, of course, as Matt Damon opens the arches to go through, out comes God and Metatron, who is played by Alanis Morissette, which, by the way,
Goddess.
Pissed off a lot of, conservative Christians. It pissed I don't know why that particular casting really angered the Christian right.
Apparently, she was supposed to play Bethany originally, and she couldn't do it because of her concert schedule. But they gave her God as a consolation prize. But I thought it was hilarious, personally. I was like,
I didn't even know it was Alanis Morissette until years later. So
yeah.
To me, it was like, oh, okay. So what?
And I did love. Obviously, this wasn't a thing at the time, but this time I watched it. Alanis Morissette, for those unfamiliar with the Great North, she plays herself. But it's funny because one of the characters, she's Judy's imaginary best friend, Alanis Morissette. But that's a straight up vocal acting role. And here, it's almost purely the opposite. It's an almost
Yeah.
purely physical role because by definition, she can't talk or everyone would,
One interesting piece about it is Jerry Falwell himself went on a rant about this film.
Of course he did.
Which, of course, he was very much alive at that point, and saying, like, if you are a true conservative, you should be against this film. You need to be lining the streets. You need to be telling them that we need to show Christians, should not do this film. And, of course, he's
it's all about being a true Christian.
Which, admittedly, I mean, Jerry Falwell was the moral center of that particular group at the time.
One of them,
for better, for worse.
Yeah, there were those who would say so. But anyway,
but I mean, there were a lot of people though there were a lot of people on the right who probably didn't listen to him on that take at the time. But then again, that was I don't know why Alanis Morissette particularly PO'd that group of people. But
who knows?
I mean, okay, Dave, you were traveling in those circles. Was there something about Alanis Morissette that was just like very offensive to the right wing?
No, I mean, I've traveled in several different circuits in the religious department growing up, and I know I grew up Lutheran. I somewhat dabbled in possibly going to an Episcopalian church, or I've been party to seeing what the Baptists kind of how they whatever, and because of my father's mother, I've experienced the staunch, very stiff Catholic Church. To me, in the Christian values type, I didn't see a problem. Even with all the propaganda that many of the youth groups and the churches were trying to peddle, which they all peddle something. It just matters how much of it you want to shovel into your own dynamic of your mind. So,
I mean, to me, I was semi-religious at the time, but only semi because of my father and all of that stuff going on. And I will say that there was something about this film that resonated for me in a lot of ways. It's like, yeah, don't get caught up in the dogma. Don't get caught up in the leaves of it. Be a good individual. Understand the basis of it. Understand the basics of it.
Right.
I mean, that was one of the points I thought the film made really well. Though I thought that Alanis Morissette was a funny thing, but I don't know why people latched on to her. So I was just curious.
Well,
I like how you put it earlier, Jake, and I think it had reference to the whole faith concept.
Right.
Like you don't have to be a total believer. All you have to do is just believe or have faith.
And they have a callback to that at the end where I think Rufus says something like, well, do you believe now? And then Bethany's like, no, but I have a good idea. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, I thought that was fun.
But of course,
we should mention, while that thought is in my mind, we didn't talk about the opening text crawl, did we? Or it wasn't really a crawl.
Well, we just basically, I think you pointed out some of the stuff that was said at the end, and I pointed out that there was almost a Monty Python-esque feel to the text crawl. It reminded me a little bit of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, minus the moose.
But, they do get a little bit of that. Like there's the first part that says, Disclaimer: a renunciation of any claim or connection with, disavowal, a statement made to save one's own ass.
Yeah.
Though it'll go without saying, 10 minutes or so into these proceedings, View Askew would like to state that this film is, from start to finish, a work of comedic fantasy, not to be taken seriously. To insist that any of what follows is incendiary or inflammatory is to miss our intention and pass undue judgment, and passing judgment is reserved for God and God alone. This goes for you film critics, too. Just kidding. So please, before you think about hurting someone over this trifle of a film, remember, even God has a sense of humor. Just look at the platypus. Thank you and enjoy the show. And then here was where it got really Monty Python-esque.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was a really Monty Python
We
thing.
sincerely apologize to all platypus enthusiasts out there who are offended by that thoughtless comment about the platypi. We at View Askew respect the noble platypus, and it is not our intention to slight these stupid creatures in any way.
Well,
Thank you again. Enjoy.
I mean, Alan Rickman said it sounds like she's very funny. She has a good sense of humor.
Right. Yeah. And of course, she does seemingly you get the impression she does forgive them. Like she does speak to or she goes up to Bartleby, who's like on his knees, and she speaks and blows his head up. But before that, he kind of thanks her. So it kind of, you get the feeling that,
I mean, he actually does embrace her and just cries.
Right. And then she looks at Loki's body and she looks at all the other bodies around. And then you see that it pans away and you look again, everyone's gone. And I always got the impression she sent them all to heaven, including Loki. That was my impression. But I mean, I don't know.
I feel like there was a deleted scene or something where you saw them back banished to
Wisconsin again.
It's possible.
And there's been rumor of a Dogma 2, which we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But it's actually kind of funny because she switches the costume, and then you see her going around and just acting weird, and then flipping up, and then she got boxers on, and of course, Bob brings in Bethany, and Bethany is, had been killed by the whole thing, which of course then Metatron makes the Karate Kid joke, wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
As
well, before that, he makes the what is it, the $6 million man or whatever. Yeah. She can rebuild her. She has the technology.
Which of course, then you find out that Bethany has a child, is with child at the end of that, and that Jay is supposed to take care of that child. Jay and Silent Bob are supposed to take care of it, which I think they referenced something about that in the reboot, but I can't remember. But it was interesting to see that at the end. Of course, she asks, like, what's the meaning of life and all that, and then just like she passes it off.
Yeah.
As they all get together and just leave.
Well, yeah. Rufus, Metatron,
Muse goes back,
Alanis Morissette, and there was one more that went back.
Serendipity.
Yeah. It's just her, Jay, and Silent Bob at the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was Dogma.
Yeah.
Anything, and again, they have had plans of a sequel. And Ben Affleck and Matt Damon have actually said that they would return for it. Now, will they do it? It's hard to say because, again, there's been a lot said about it because Kevin Smith has gotten the rights back. So there's been a lot of rejoicing and partying for that. And I do look forward to seeing a full-on re-release of Blu-ray or 4K of this, because the
Right.
Blu-ray has been notoriously
Mhm.
overpriced in collection circles.
Hmm.
And I will be glad to see that finally back in print again.
Right.
I mean, anybody can get the DVDs. Shoot, anybody can get the 2-disc DVD that I've got.
Yep.
But that Blu-ray is actually worth some money.
You know, it's kind of funny. My last job that fired me, somebody threw a slew of films out for free, and guess what was for free?
Hmm.
Dogma on Blu-ray, and I was like, "Holy
Nice.
fucking shit!"
I mean,
Nice.
right now you can get the Blu-ray for around $40, which is not terrible, but
Yeah.
definitely that is the consistent price on eBay for the
Hmm.
thing. Some people try to shoot for the moon and go for 100 and something or more, but seeing as most people are selling it for around 40, I'm pretty sure that is more the price.
I'm willing to wait for the
Yeah.
Criterion and or Arrow release. Like if they do Dogma, if Arrow does what they did with Mallrats, that'd definitely be worth the upgrade.
I mean, for the most part, Kevin Smith does believe in physical media, with
Right.
the exception of that NFT bullshit that he did.
Yeah.
So I do think that there will be a physical release or an upgraded physical release of Dogma. And I do want to see that.
Right.
But any other thoughts on the plot of Dogma before we go into special features or special effects?
I just think they did a pretty darn good job of kind of doing a Jack Kerouac way of, a journey of this magnitude with a lot of different Christianity type,
Well,
situations.
I think out of the View Askew-averse, this one actually is definitely still, in my opinion, one of the top tier. I mean, it may not be as top tier as Chasing Amy, but it is more entertaining than Chasing Amy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh, it's a highly entertaining film, and it is one of the stronger ones, or strongest ones, really.
And Chasing Amy is also flawed in its own way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The whole concept alone of having somebody who is a lesbian, well, it's obviously she's going to be straight for the right man. That's a flawed concept just in and of itself, but it is still a well done movie. I still say that for Dogma, there is of course there's base humor, but that's a part of the View Askew-averse.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's probably one of the best written, other than Chasing Amy, of Kevin Smith's earlier work when it comes to the Askew-averse. Shoot, some of his non-Askew productions aren't as well written, in my opinion.
Yeah.
True.
Huh.
Tammy, what did you think of production?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it's they had all the different what do you want to call them? I don't entities, or the different because you had your apostle, and you had little
Prophets.
the prophets, and and I thought it was I thought it was somewhat unique and different way of like you said, the journey, and what and what was supposed to be the ending of this journey, and all the different people, the different characters that were involved in it. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was, you know, a whole different take on like everything, you know, and I don't
You
know. I
almost
just
have to. You almost have to watch it twice to get all the different like things that it references. You know.
yeah, I caught a bunch of them, and it's you like I said, you know, going into this movie, I had no idea what to expect because you guys kept talking about it and this and that, and you know, and Kevin Smith and his different movies, which you know, I'm still the kind of like well, the one on the outside here that's kind of like, okay, he's done this, okay, he's you know, um,
You'll
so
get
I
to
don't.
see Clerks in October.
Unless we watch it beforehand, I guess it depends.
But yeah, I there wasn't a lot of effects in it, but the few there were kind of hokey, you know, with people
Well,
falling from the sky and you know and things, you know. But I think um I think how they did the effects were actually amusing, you know, that they you know
Yeah.
they didn't have to be these big production effects, you know, and I think that would have taken away from it if they were more, I don't know, extravagant than what they were, you know.
I
I
like
think,
the effects as much as I did Legion when it came to the angel stuff.
Ugh,
But
I didn't.
Legion is still not my favorite movie. I love the opening of Legion, and the rest of it I could do without.
you know, the wings were, I guess, a little bit of a disappointment because, like David had mentioned, we watched Lucifer, the series, you know, and the way they did the wings and Lucifer was, I thought, awesome, you know.
well, the way they did the wings in Supernatural with Cass, it was pretty darn cool too. So
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't bad, but I mean, yeah, they were a little disappointing, you know. But yeah, I thought production was cool.
It was pretty solid. It could have been better, could have been worse. It was you can definitely tell it's a higher budget production than some of his earlier films. I mean, it's obvious when it comes to Clerks, but it's definitely
Which I haven't gotten to
yeah,
that point. So.
yeah.
Hey, first week in October, we are going to cover Clerks.
which I still haven't seen Clerks
Again.
2 or 3,
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to do that in
I own them.
November.
Well, you will get to see those.
So just like Jay and Silent Bob reboot, I still have to see that one, even though I picked it up.
We'll be seeing that also in November. So.
But in any case, I think we're now at music.
Right.
Was there any new music involved with that?
The score by Howard Shore, actually.
Oh,
Pretty decent.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty decent for what it was.
Yeah.
I'll have to agree. I kind of like this film pretty much all the way around, and I tend to like the more controversial ones anyways, so.
And of course, music-wise, we get that scene where, well, at the end, Alanis Morissette contributes an original song called "Still," which is actually pretty cool. It plays over the end credits.
Well, I just gotta say, you ought to know.
Yeah, that one. And then we had, geez, I'm trying to remember. Was it?
I think the found music was actually pretty well placed.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, when they did the music for the strip scene, I thought that was very great because I mean, you had the beat and I mean, both Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes kind of like going at it with the beat with the dollars raised up.
Was that Candy Girl?
I can't remember.
I think it was. But yeah, by New Edition, is that that was one of a couple of found songs. But yeah, I always thought that was very well chosen music for that particular moment.
I swear to God, what was it? Wayne's World. Those guys did the thing that they did in the car. When they were like, "What gear are you in?" They were doing that side to the head thing that I think they did in Wayne's World.
Could be, yeah.
All right. Well, with that's Dogma. And let's have some fun here. Of course, favorite scene, but also favorite religious film that's not Dogma. So it could be a serious religious film. It could be a comedic religious film. But what is your favorite religious film? And of course, your favorite scene. So we'll start with you, Jay.
Well. Kind of hard to pick a favorite scene in this one. There's so many good ones. I guess I would say almost all of Alan Rickman's scenes were really good. The part where he is explaining to Bethany what it was like to tell Jesus what his role was going to be. It was a really good scene. And I guess maybe the moment where he showed up in the pillar of fire and she put him out with a fire extinguisher, that was just so freaking hilarious. That would have to be. And the opening scene where Loki is corrupting that poor nun with the speech about the walrus and the carpenter, that was great. And there's a couple other good moments, but I guess I'll go with those. And did you say favorite character or were we...
Favorite religious film?
Okay. So favorite religious film that's not Dogma. I'm gonna. That's kind of tricky too, in part because of how you might define what makes a religious film. But I will say that favorite would probably have to be Monty Python's Life of Brian. But I do want to give a shout out to a couple that I would consider three that I consider very important to me for this, that, or another reason. I already mentioned The Last Temptation of the Christ. Watching Jesus Christ Superstar is such a yearly tradition that I have all the songs memorized. And I got a shout out Saved. I loved that movie, and I actually hope we get to talk about it one day, because that one I thought was the perfect antidote to The Passion of the Christ. Yeah.
You watched Dave and Tammy say Passion of the Christ was the most favorite film of all time.
Yeah.
But, hey, they could say Sallow was one of their favorite religious films.
No.
All right. Well, how about you, Dave? Favorite scene, favorite religious film?
Okay. Favorite scene is the shit demon scene. Out of all of them, I know that most people call it gross. I was impressed. And I've seen a couple of scenes from other movies. Like I remember I believe it was in Flesh Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders. There was a scene where they were entering the anal canal, and they had loosened some people that were all like dressed up like pieces of shit, and they cut them loose. So they were all thankful. So they invited them to this cafe, like towards the stomach, and there was this singing thing of singing thing of a band of shit that was singing at the cafe. So to me,
So that's a religious film?
no, it's not a religious film. I'm gonna my religious film. I'll hold a candle to it, because watch. It's called Holy Hell. And I got two of these candles for being I was actually a producer behind producing the film at a festival. And it was a Canadian director, and I actually really liked the movie. It was an independent film, and it's almost like anti-religious, but it's about a priest who goes around and kills a bunch of gang members for basically obliterating his parish. And the way he goes about it is like all religious, but he ends up taking them down. I believe the guy who plays the priest is also the director. So I believe his name is Ryan LaPlante. So I just get a kick out of the film. So that's my favorite religious film.
All right. Well, but Tammy, favorite scene and favorite religious film.
Well, I do have to say I really like the. I agree with Jake about the. What's his name? Rufus, is it when he appears in the as the flame?
Metatron.
Huh?
Metatron.
Metatron. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I like that. that was cool. And then she puts them out, and he's just like freaking out. This is how you greet everybody, you know.
Right.
Like you said, there was a bunch of good ones, you know, when Chris Rock shows up, you know, and they had just made a comment about, what do you think, we just fall out of the sky? There he is. He fell out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So,
as Will Smith would say in another movie that Linda Florentina was in, it just be raining black people.
okay. Well, yeah, there was a bunch of cute, you know, cool ones. I don't know if you consider it a religious film or not, but I guess I kind of do. The Devil's Advocate.
Well, yeah. There's an element there.
It involves it, definitely. That is for sure.
That is one of my favorites.
And you know, Al Pacino had a field day playing the devil. He had fun with that role.
Al Pacino, such an interesting actor.
Right.
I mean,
and if you want to think of a fun one, oh God, I like that one.
Oh yeah, the rare John Denver acting role. Yeah.
Yep. Oh God's pretty good. Good.
Seen that in years.
We did it not that long ago on the other channel.
What was that? What was that one that had a remake with Brendan Fraser in it? And he was like the devil.
Oh, are you talking about was it Bedazzled
Yeah,
with Elizabeth Hurley?
I'm pretty sure that that was based on earlier one that had uh my mind is blanking, but I'm pretty sure that that Dazzle was or Bedazzled.
I think
That was what it
Yeah.
was called.
I never did see that actually. Well, maybe I
Yeah,
did.
no,
I
no,
don't
no.
remember it. Let's put it that way.
The original Bedazzled though was actually pretty good too.
Oh, good
So
deal.
Well, as far as my favorite scene, the boardroom scene is one of my favorite scenes, though I do think that all the others are interesting that y'all put forward. Though it's interesting, the Golgothan, it's kind of crazy how nasty it is, but at the same time, how it doesn't look like it's an assassin the way that they have the face, because they had the face look all cutesy.
Right.
So it's kind of funny in its own sense. But yeah, I do think the boardroom scene is my favorite. As far as religious films, my favorite religious film of all time is a mockumentary called "And God Spoke,"
Ha. Yeah.
which I just find it hilarious. And one of my favorite scenes in that one was where they're trying to get money for it, and they have Moses come in with the 10 Commandments. And he's got a 6-pack of Cokes. It's like, God also provided us with this elixir, this magical elixir drink. But just as some also Rand's Leap of Faith with Steve Martin is also one I feel like is overlooked. And one that has religious overtones, especially at the ending, is a Peter Sellers film called Being There, which I think we have on the channel.
Oh, that's a great one.
Let me double check. I think we have covered that, didn't we?
And come to think of it, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade has strong religious overtones to it. So who knows? See?
Well, we haven't covered Being There. We have to cover that sometime in the future.
That's a good one, yeah.
It is, in my opinion, Peter Sellers' best film. Hands down. I mean, yes, Dr. Strangelove is good, but I feel like that one just takes the cake. But in any case, that is, I guess, all I have to say about that.
All right.
And I just hand this back to Dave, and I guess remind Jake on your outro to let us know about next month.
okay. I also want to put out one other film that I had totally forgotten about, but you mentioned Peter Sellers, and I have to mention the only Peter Sellers movie that Ringo Starr from the Beatles actually shows up in, called The Magic Christian. Which is a pretty decent film as well, at least at the time. Interesting story. But anyways, let's go into our outros. Let's tell the audience a little bit about ourselves and what we do. So, let's start with you, Tammy. Who are you, and what do you do?
I'm the muse. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I go on this channel and another one and talk about movies with everybody and hear their opinions. Check out a lot of times films that I've never seen before, like this one, and some of them are fun, like this one was. Some of them aren't, but it's always a lot of fun to go on either channel and just check everything out. And then when I'm not checking out the movies and going on, then I'm at a car show, probably with my 1972 Grand Prix.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
My name is Kotobukijake. I am the sometime co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World, where we do stuff. Usually I'll come on to help with pickup videos and animation discussions. I know there's one supposed to be coming up this week. Brandon's birthday pick for the month, and I have way too much on my plate, and not always able to get to, even when I have the time. Like, for example, right now, it's freaking hot. So, a lot of my time right now is spent trying to keep cool.
That seems to be the big thing about this time of year.
Yeah, but more so than usual, even. But I do make time to watch stuff to join these folks. I'm definitely looking forward to an excuse to watch this one. And yeah, I do look forward to this one day getting a re-release in a Blu-ray. I myself do have the old DVD release, which is certainly worth having on the shelf, but it'd be nice to have a nicer one. But that's really mostly it right now. I mean, I've been doing a lot of traveling about to try and see cool stuff out in the field. I'm really thinking about hitting the beach this weekend. I'm just not sure I want to deal with the traffic. I'm still going back and forth on that. But yeah, just do what I do.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We like physical media, and we do our best. We are currently in a hiatus from reviews while I go through our European travel journal. We're going to be doing day 5, I believe, which is going to be our trip to Shakespeare's Globe Theatre and the Tower of London, which, is fun in that sense for those of you who like travel content. Of course, we do still have pickup stuff, and there is a pickup that I just edited and have uploaded for this Wednesday, and I'm hoping to get with Jake next week to do that, and to do a pickup there as well. And of course, as Jake said, I'm hoping that by delaying a week, we'll be able to pull a few more people for the film, which will be Galaxy Express 999, which is a classic in many senses. Whereas today we are discussing things on my birthday, but 999 is has another significance in relation to my birthday, so it's kind of fun in those ways.
Okay. I'm looking forward to your escape from the guillotine. But in any case, my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this this journey so far. It's been a pleasure talking to many of these films with you gents and my muse. In any case, I do some moonlighting on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I also similarly talk with another group of characters. Tammy is included in the group with my good friend Boris. And if you haven't given it a listen, we talked about the movie To Kill a Mockingbird this last Sunday. So I know that's another controversial movie. So what is it with controversial movies this month? I don't know. I don't get it. But in any case, I believe that they all need to be talked about in some fashion. So come on over to either channel and definitely check some of these discussions out that we've had this month. Also, I do some video pickups and some video reviews on said channel from time to time, and some gameplay. So if you like games too and following along on some of that stuff, feel free. But in any case, like, share, subscribe. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion, what you thought of the movie, and if you haven't seen the movie, go out and see it. I know we all had a blast, and it's not all the time that all of us kind of agree that that it was a good film. So
Yeah, sounds like everybody actually enjoyed this one. I don't get that very often on my picks. Yeah.
In any case, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Did anyone mention what's coming up?
Well, I was thinking you were going to do it on your go for it because it's your franchise month.
Yeah. So your franchise, what did you choose to do?
So it is mine.
Yep.
I thought so, but I couldn't remember for sure. All right. So if I am not totally wrong about this, because my memory is for shit, I guess next week we'll be starting the classic Francis Ford Coppola magnum opus, The Godfather.
Ooh.
And we'll be hitting the 3 movies, and then coming around at the end of the month with Godfather Coda, which was, I guess, a reworking of the 3rd movie. I've actually never seen Coda, so that'll be new for me too. But
I haven't seen the Coda one, but I know I have a copy of it. So
right. Yeah, but it'll be a slightly different movie.
I even have Brittany in on that one because she has never seen any of the Godfather films.
Oh, wow.
So they thought about that as an excuse as well.
It is a little bit of a time suck, which is very annoying to me because we have so limited time and whatnot. But they're well worth the. They're roughly 3 hours each, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
yep,
be good.
Let's see. And The Godfather is available on Tubi.
All right.
All right. So
alrighty.
See you all next week.
All right. See you later.
See you later.
Everyone say good night.
Good night.
And happy
Good night,
birthday
everyone.
again.
Yes.
Inside movies galore, just makes you just want more. We've had all in the world of media to explore. Horror, anime, or Curious George. Our love of new things was our reward. It is the best night of our week.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.